Hey guys, today I am talking to Ashley Hawks. Ashley is based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She is an amazing entrepreneur an expert actually in the bridal wedding industry. She has revolutionized that entire industry based on some of the amazing things that she's going to share on the podcast. So join me here at Exited together with Ashley Hawks. Thanks, guys. All right, everyone. I am so excited today. I have Ashley Hawks from Minneapolis, Minnesota. She is a
Mhm.
founder that has exited, and we're so happy to have
Mhm.
you, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me, Gabriela. This is going to be great.
I know. I am so excited. And I actually, just having a little conversation before we started recording, we found that we have a very dear friend of mine that we have as a mutual friend in Minneapolis. So that's so great.
It's such
Uh,
a small world.
It
I love
is.
it.
It is. It's awesome. Well, Ashley, here at Exited, we talk to founders, we talk about their exits, we talk about life, we just talk about who are the founders, what do they do, what do they like. So tell me a little bit about your background, like where did you grow up? Where are you from?
So, born and raised in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, my mother owned a bridal shop for 25 years. So, that was the family business. That was, we'd go after school and we'd help and we'd steam dresses and vacuum and wash mirrors. And I absolutely loved it. A little bit of a girly girl and being surrounded by these beautiful dresses and sparkles and pearls and just the whole wedding industry was so alluring to me. There was something so magical, the fairy tale of being proposed to and then planning this party and seeing
Right.
these women come in. So I absolutely loved that industry. Years later, I met these two entrepreneurs who came into the bridal shop. And this was, I'm going to date myself, but this was back before Instagram, back when YouTube was becoming popular.
Right.
And and they had this idea of how they wanted to revolutionize the wedding industry and how they're going to use video to help these small businesses grow. And seeing how hard it was for my mom, started her business in the 90s. It was all yellow pages and flyers and
Right.
mailers and just word of mouth. And all of a sudden, the internet comes out. No one knew how to make a website, no one
Right.
really understood online advertising. And so to have this idea where we were going to work with businesses and help them use these new tools, right? Because it's not just about advertising in the magazine and having the biggest ad. It's
Right.
brides now want to um, brides really want to get to know their wedding vendors. It's
Right.
not just who has the most awards anymore. So there was a huge shift in the industry, and I took a leap of faith and I said yes, and I was one of the founders, and we built this thing, and it ended up being a company called Forever Bride. In the very
Forever
beginning, it was called
Bride.
Forever TV. Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean, what an interesting niche, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
your wedding is everything, right? Like is the like you said, I mean, I think I heard you say the fairy tale, the
Mm-hmm.
dream of creating a family. So, there's this whole notion around being perfect, the perfect dress, the perfect time, the perfect moment. So it must be like a lot of pressure, right? To
Yeah.
please the consumer and give them something that fulfills all of the dreams that they have,
Mm-hmm. My
right?
husband is in the mortgage space, and there's a funny statistic that says uh, the purchase of your wedding gown is a bigger emotional purchase than buying your first home. Like people put more emphasis and
Um,
more pressure, and there's more um, importance around the
right.
dress than your first home, which I mean
Yeah.
makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big deal.
That's
So.
amazing. Okay, and so you basically have that background. You inherited the wedding, I guess we can say, see industry or the wedding, all of that. Your
Mhm.
mom was building it up. And then you kind of what a beautiful story, right? It's like because I firmly believe that a lot of what we do has to do with what your previous generations did. Like I see
Yes.
that story, that is that like isn't that interesting?
Well, and I think you're exactly right because we get a peek behind the curtain of what it's really like, and you get to see those pain points. I mean, I work with entrepreneurs all the time now. We'll get into that later,
Right,
but you're exactly right. A lot of times, it's you have that passion because you got a firsthand look at a pain point, and it made you either upset enough, excited enough, or you saw a need and you
right,
use that passion to go, there's a problem here, there's a something's broken in the bridge, or there's a disconnect here, and I know I can fix that, and that's the passion that all of us crazy entrepreneurs have. So
right.
yeah, I think it is interesting. There are a lot of people that I know that they have something in their family line, a parent or an uncle, that they got excited about that industry and they saw behind the curtain.
And it runs, which is, I mean, again, as mom, because I understand you're also a mom. How
Mm-hmm.
many babies do you have?
I have two little ones. Well, they're not
Okay,
little, but they're 11 and 8. And there's it's like starting to click now where oh my gosh, they're not little. You
right,
spend so much, you feel like you're going to be in baby phase forever. And now
right.
my daughter just is wearing the same size shoes as me, and
I
that just
know.
is just so weird.
My daughter wears my clothes. Like literally, my daughter is 12. She now
Hmm.
goes into my closet and then she'll, because she's in that age. And, some of them, when I
Uh-huh.
used to wear extra, extra small, I have all of that in a suitcase and now she'll come out of my closet with my clothes.
I
So
told her, I was like, this is not going to be a two-way street. Like, I am allowed to
right.
borrow your items and your shoes. You are not allowed to
I
borrow
know,
mine.
I know, I know.
I
What
will
an
buy you the
amazing
cute
thing.
shoes because then we can both wear
Yeah,
them.
what an amazing thing. I want to talk a little bit about your mom because she is basically building a business in the 90s. I don't think
Mhm.
it was like that. Like, I feel like, I don't know if it's because we have more social media and we're sharing more stories about our families and ourselves that I feel like back in the day, it wasn't as common that a mom would be running her business,
Mm-mm.
right? Because
Well, it was 1988 was the first year that women could apply for a credit card without a male signature.
that's crazy. I didn't know that.
1988. Yeah,
Wow.
up until 1988, if you wanted a credit card, you needed to have daddy or husband or brother
I didn't
co-sign
know
for you.
that.
It's nuts. So
Oh
yeah,
my
I
gosh.
mean, growing up, both my parents were entrepreneurs, so it just was normal to me. And of course, she had really great, girl boss friends, and
Right.
so I was surrounded by that, so it seemed normal. But then growing up later, I realized that wasn't normal, and that was really, she was a trailblazer.
I mean, yeah, I mean, how can you run a business without like a credit card or, the ability to
Mhm.
buy, and in your business, I mean, how does it work with a bridal business with the dresses? I know zero about it. So, you buy them from the designers and then you resell,
Hmm.
like, how
It's
does
a
that work?
huge, yeah. So it's a huge investment because you need the samples in the store for the customers to
Right,
come in and touch and feel and try on. But typically the customer will go, well, I love this dress. It's in white. I'd like to order it in ivory, and I'd like to order it in my
right.
size. So then you place the order with the designer, and they make it from scratch. But the designer comes out with new collections twice a year. And
Okay.
so the fun part is, this was my absolute favorite, was going to Las Vegas and seeing all the designers and watching the runway
Nice.
shows, and then getting to see all the new dresses before anybody else. And then it's like shopping where you get to sit there with your little notebook and go, let's see, I'd like one of those and two of
Right,
those, and let's do a size this. And I think one of the things that my mom definitely was, went against the grain on a lot of things. We were known to have a lot of plus size dresses in our store, and
oh
most
wow.
stores only carried, quote, sample size. And it was just very obvious that the actual sample size that the designer would suggest is not a normal size that most
Right,
people can try on. And if anything, like, I thought it was easier to have a bigger size, and then you
right,
can clamp it on because then you can fit a
right,
wider range,
right.
and it's an emotional customer.
It
So
is.
the last thing I want to do is to bring her out of the fitting room, have her stand up on the pedestal in the three-way mirror, and all of her friends and family are sitting behind her, and the dress is,
Right.
far from
I'm
zipping,
sorry.
and
Right.
things are
Yeah.
hanging out.
Right.
It's like,
Right. Right.
so that was
So,
one of my sales strategies too. I'm like, no, we don't want to try that on. Let's try this one on.
so tell me more about that because I mean, all the entrepreneurs we talk to and we work with, I mean, it's all about solving a problem.
Mhm.
There are problems. Everybody that I talk to, it's like, I just see problems everywhere and we need to solve them. Tell me more about, so, okay, so what was your strategy? How did you change that problem that, if you were maybe a plus size woman, you're just not going to find the dress of your dreams, right?
Well, and yeah, so the first thing we did is we always made sure that we had plenty of inventory. So, a typical bridal shop, let's say you were plus size, you would come in, they're like, well, we have one or two dresses that you can try on. Here are the two dresses that you get to pick from. Even though we have 1,000 dresses over here, you get to try on two. And we made sure that our store had tons of everything, right? The downside of that is, like I said, the designers come up with new pieces
Right.
every season and things get discontinued. So then you're stuck with these samples that you usually try to sell at a discount. And so that is actually a whole other business model that we can talk about is
Okay.
how to, create like a separate type of store where you got, off the rack only, because an off the rack only customer is very different than a custom order customer. It's just a whole different experience. But there's the psychology behind the sale too of making someone feel comfortable long before we even get into the fitting room. It's creating a great relationship with them and understanding what's important to them. If all they care about is man, they've always dreamed of a long train their whole life. They went to a
Right.
wedding when they were a little girl and they remember this long train, and then I just am showing them other dresses, and I missed
Right.
that piece, or all that matters to them is is feeling comfortable, and I'm showing them dresses that are not, and I'm showing, or I'm explaining, oh, look at all the beading on this, and look at the lace, and look at this. They don't care about the beading and the lace. They want to talk about the comfort. And so I think just a lot of people in sales or even business owners, we need to make sure that we're paying attention to what is important to our customer, and then
Right.
using that same verbiage back to them, making sure, and that's a way that you get your pulse, your touch points too,
Right.
of like, are we on the right track? Are we going in the direction that's making you happy? So many
Right.
people will go down that rabbit hole and then go, how did I lose that sale? Like I thought I was showing them really great dresses with lace and beading and things, and you missed the boat. They cared about comfort.
And
So
how do you know? I mean, do you measure your success in terms of feeding the need? Do you measure it by your sales? Do you measure it by like how do you measure, like I guess you're selling a dress, the person leaves, is it what, how do you realize that you are, are you on the right track and offering what you should be or not? I mean, I guess the sales would
yeah,
be an obvious answer, but what
I
else?
think
What
people's
other?
body language, I swear every entrepreneur
Yeah.
needs to be in sales. You know how most people say everyone needs to work at a restaurant? I
Yes.
think everybody needs to work in sales. And you really start to learn people's body language, right? How are they? And I had an advantage because I got to put my customer in front of a mirror. And
Right.
so they
Right. You
really
can see
gave me
them.
physical, and
Yeah.
they would
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
to look at things. And so you get a direct, but you have to pay attention to those cues, and
Right.
some people are a lot easier to read than others. But really you'll start knowing if you're on the right track right away um, based on those physical cues long before you get those verbal cues. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, success for us was having someone leave our store in a good mood. They were happy, whether or not we made a sale. I mean, there were a lot of times. There was a store on the other side of town. The Twin Cities is Minneapolis and St. Paul. So we
Right.
were the Minneapolis side, and there was a store very similar to us, family owned, really great. They're still in business today. Friends with the owner. We would send people to his store if we didn't
Right.
have something, or we weren't able to find what they were looking for, or even because we carried a lot of the same designers, if they came in saying, hey, I found this in a magazine, I really want to try this one on, I say, I really don't have that, but you know what, let me make a call really quick. And I call over there. I'd say, do you guys have this in stock? And sometimes they say yes, and I'm like, hey, you know what, you're going to go see my friend Jimmy. Here's
Right.
directions, here's how to park, because parking was difficult. Like, they know you're coming, they've got the dress already pulled, and they would do the same thing to us.
Right. And you know
So
what?
sometimes it's
No, yeah, and I mean you touch on this concept that is there is enough for everybody, right?
mm-hmm,
There's business for everybody that you just need to believe, and collaboration, right? Even if
mm-hmm.
it's your competitors, the power that we have as entrepreneurs to collaborate with each other rather than separate and have, this ugly competition, right?
Mm-hmm. Your reputation is 100 times more important than any sale ever could be,
Ooh,
and sometimes
that's
you can
so
get
good.
lost. Yeah, sometimes you can get lost in, it's almost, what's the word, like euphoric, where you're really, you're working with someone, you want that, like, I know what's best for you. I know this is the right thing.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the hardest things is realizing like a happy customer is much more important than making the sale. And your reputation goes long past the joy of that money, right? Because
right,
the money is going to get spent. Let's say you make $1,000 from the sale. Great. That money is going to be gone in a week with bills and things like that. But you have a
right,
happy customer. I mean, that reputation is going to flourish and is going to bear fruit for years and years and years. But
right.
I think that's a mistake a lot of young entrepreneurs, young salespeople will make, is they're so hungry to make that sale. They're so hungry to get that check mark, you know?
That will, yeah. And even when you get like a pushy salesperson, they'll sell you whatever, they'll get success. But then you get home and you're like, why did I just buy this? Like, I didn't need it.
Mm-hmm.
They pushed me into it. We have similar stuff happening to us. I more often than often, I'm going to say not often or not, but often will get somebody with an idea. In fact, we recently had a call. Somebody had a great idea. They wanted to create this big legal structure. And I'm like, dude, let's make a couple of sales. Let's prove
Mm-hmm.
let's do a little bit of a proof of concept. And then we can talk about, you spending all these money with us. I would love to take your money. I'll take it right now if you want me to. But I want you to know you may not be at a point where you really need all these legal things
I see
and
that
contracts,
all the time.
right?
Yes. I had a
And
mentor, and this is how he described it, is there's so many people, and he called it ready aim. People will make all these plans and they'll get everything. They'll write the perfect website and the perfect branding and they'll get all the little swag and all of this and they'll make plans about plans to have plans to have plans to plans. Meanwhile, somebody over here is out there selling
they're
and it's
going,
not
they're
perfect.
going for
It's
it.
not
Yeah.
perfect. They don't have the perfect website. Their
Yeah.
logo isn't this. There's a typo on the
Yeah.
website. The business cards aren't even in the mail yet, but they're going and they're hustling and they will always win because what they're doing is they're ready, fire, aim. They're making adjustments based on, okay, we tried this, that worked. Okay, this didn't. Let's make an adjustment, make an adjustment. So by the time that person A, ready, aim person,
Right.
finally hits the market and finally starts to make
It's
sales, they
taken.
may realize that
Yeah.
80% of what they built for the last 10 months and $2 million in
Yeah.
seed money is completely off.
Right.
Like that is some of the best advice I ever got was get out there, make the sales, get, and you'll get feedback from your customers in real time. You'll learn
Yeah.
right away if you're on the right track or not.
Yeah, it's almost like, get in the pool, just jump. You don't need the vest, just go. I
Yes.
mean, worst case
I say that all the
scenario,
time.
somebody will save you. Like, like a baby that's trying to, somebody will come and grab you,
Yeah.
whether he's, a spouse, a family member, or the bank will stop giving you credit. But, you
Mm-hmm.
just, and that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, the level of risk.
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen, say, risk in your life as an entrepreneur?
Mm.
Right? What is the role of risk in your path as an entrepreneur?
If I could go back and tell my younger self, 20 years ago, even 16 years ago, it would be to take more risks.
Right?
As an entrepreneur, we're naturally risk takers, right? Putting your name and your reputation and your money and your entire livelihood out on the line, and you're creating
Yeah.
something out of nothing and
Yes.
expecting it to provide for your family. That's risky, yes. But looking back, I would tell my younger self to take bigger risks. Like when I
Yeah.
went here, go here and see what happens. Because almost every time I took a risk, it paid off in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
Even if it was a little failure at the time, it taught me something else that actually spurred me on further than if I hadn't made that mistake in the beginning, or it was a lesson, or it was a relationship that I made. And so, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be risk, but I love what you said about the pool. I say
Right.
this a lot. I go and speak at a lot of the local high schools too. I wish they had this when I was in high school. They have
Right.
entrepreneurship programs,
Yeah.
and they had nothing like that. You
Right.
had to pick a job. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to pick a job. I want to make my own job.
Exactly.
But I
I
go
don't want to have a job. Me neither. I want to do
and
stuff.
and
Yeah.
I
And other
and I
stuff.
talk exactly about what you said, and I use the example of like you can't read how to swim. And there's so
Right.
many people that like go to school to learn business and they go to all these seminars and they read all these books. And yes, that's great to a
Right.
point, but you got to get in the pool.
You
Like
gotta
you
jump.
you cannot learn how to be an entrepreneur without doing it.
You have to. And, building, solving problems, taking risk with
Getting your
measure,
butt
of
kicked.
course. With measure, right? We're not talking about going out and like, Although I've heard some great stories about people just mortgaging their homes to launch a business and then
Mhm.
things paying off. But the thing about I hear about every entrepreneur, even it's like you said, if it didn't work, you get up, you get back
Mhm.
on the horse, and now you keep walking. That is just something that's an attribute that everybody seems to have, which is it doesn't matter if the door is shut, I'll either open it back up, find another door, climb through the
Mhm.
window, whatever I need to do, to pursue that dream. Which I don't know if you have this feeling of, I feel like, you achieve something and then there's something else. Do you have that feeling of, oh, I've
Mhm.
conquered this market. Now, what about this market? How is that? How does
Uh-huh.
that work with you?
Oh, I read this quote on Instagram the other day. It was like, give yourself some credit. The reason you never feel satisfied is you're always moving the bar on yourself.
Right?
Because we're always like, as soon as we're almost there, I'm like, no, but I can do more and I can do this. And we have so many different irons in the fire that we never give ourselves a moment to go, oh yeah, I did a great job. Or I accomplished that. Let's sit for a moment. It's like we're always pushing to that next thing. And sometimes we don't even let ourselves achieve it because we're always moving the bar.
Exactly. And that's so true. And that's where like I feel like wellness comes in and like, you know, take your time, breathe, everything's
Mm,
fine. You're gonna achieve the number. You're gonna get there. But I feel like I know in my personality is like this constant pursuit. So it's
mhm,
really good to get to know yourself and like, know when you're maybe reaching a burnout situation or getting
mhm.
too stressed, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
That's
100%.
yeah. So, okay. So, you have an interest in, we were talking with some of the other founders here and talking about choosing the partner, right? Like, for example, the attributes that your partner should have. And then we talked a little bit about, there's the business partner, there's your life partner, right? And they need
Mhm.
to, everybody needs to fit in the right position for you to feel comfortable and be the entrepreneur you were born to be. And in your case, it's also a family business. So, right? So how does that work? The family business, you as a daughter or you as a wife, how does that work? Being a business partner with the people you're also doing business with.
Well, so for me, it was a little different because when I met these two guys that had this idea to build Forever Bride, it meant that I had to leave the bridal shop.
Right.
And I knew that I never wanted to take over the bridal shop, and I knew that I wanted to do something bigger. I knew I wanted to do something that served more the business side, not the bride side. I felt like I had
Okay.
already put in my dues. I was done, dealing with brides.
Yeah.
So that was hard, right? I think she was hurt a little bit in the beginning
Yeah.
because we had worked together for so long.
So this is your mom?
Yeah, so my mom owned the bridal shop, but
Okay.
I left her to build Forever Bride because
So,
Forever Bride took every ounce of my time and attention.
right.
And they were these two young, I mean, we were all in our early 20s, mid 20s. And the three of us worked day and night for years and years
Right.
and years building this, and it became a household name in the Twin Cities. We had hundreds of businesses that we served. So basically we created this platform, a website that a bride could search local vendors. So let's say you're
Oh,
getting married and you
wow.
wanted to search the florist in your area, and you would say, okay, I'm looking for a florist, within the Twin Cities area with this type of price point, and it would populate all of our members because it was a membership base. It didn't just pull
Okay.
in everybody. And then we would have pictures and videos, and from early days we would make these cute little videos where we'd go in and we'd go, hi, Susie, tell us a little bit about your bakery. And she'd be like, hi, I'm Susie, and this is, Susie's Bake Shop, and this is what makes us
Wow.
different. And it was like Instagram Reels before any of that existed. So there were these
Wow.
short little videos where we would show Susie making her cupcakes, and we really specialize in gluten free. And my mom and I started it, and so she would tell a story, and she would talk about like what was important to her, and it was so interesting. Again, like we have Instagram Reels and we have TikTok. So this
Right.
seems so normal. But 15 years ago, to be able to see
Right.
behind the scenes of a wedding venue, or,
It
the
was
hottest
new.
photographer in town turns out to be a dick. Like, I don't know if I can say that. Sorry. But you know what I mean? You see these big ads, and you're like, oh, he's the
Right.
number one photographer, the da 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 da. And then you do a meeting with him and he's a jerk. And you're like, I
Right.
don't want this guy following me around all day long. And so it gave you a little peek of, hi, I'm Greg, and I'm a photographer, and this is my style. And you can watch a 10-second video on somebody, and right away you go, I like that guy.
You'll
I
know.
like him. Or you know
Yeah.
what? That person bugs me. I'm not going to book them. And so these videos gave people the opportunity to get this little inside peek before running around town and scheduling 20 venue
Right.
tours and 10 cake tastings. It helped them
So,
narrow it down.
and you guys were the first ones doing that.
Our biggest competitor was the Knot and Wedding Wire, and they're
Okay.
both, absolute behemoths of companies. But what
Right.
we did that they didn't is, because we were small, we got to know these businesses, and when we're doing videos, and and what's so interesting is, so we originally built the company to serve the wedding business owner, right? So instead of
Right.
just giving someone fish, we were teaching them to fish. We were showing them, okay, hey, we made you this video. We'll put it on our website, but let me show you how to put it on your website, and it'll skyrocket your SEO. This is back when Google bought YouTube. And if
Right.
you had a YouTube video on your website, it increased your chances of being on the front page of Google by, I don't know, like
Wow.
hundreds of
Back when
percent. I mean,
all of
just
that was
ridiculous.
Wild
Huh?
Wild West, it was
It
everything,
totally
right?
was.
Yeah.
Yes, the algorithms were so much different. And so if you did just one, two, three, you're on the front page of Google like that. So we were helping these wedding business owners figure out how to, hey, so then we started doing seminars. Hey, here's how
Wow.
to build a Facebook business page. Here's how to post on Instagram when Instagram was
Really
brand
pioneering.
new. And we
That's
would
a
teach them all
pioneer.
these different things. We literally did a seminar called What the F is SEO? Because nobody knew what SEO meant. They thought it was
Right.
some Italian word or something. So we would break it down and help them
That's
figure out,
cool.
like, here's the tools and the tricks to grow your business. And then what happened was, in true Ashley form, we couldn't just do regular seminars. We had to do like big fun party seminars with full catering and open bars and entertainment. And we'd bring all these vendors together, and then they're networking and they're meeting each other and building relationships. And this photographer
Wow.
is now buddies with this videographer, and they're sharing business back and forth. And they're, this bakery, they don't do gluten free, so they're
Right.
recommending Susie's Bakery, who specializes in gluten free. And this community started to build that was so strong that the Knot couldn't compete with. And so we
That's
had this
insane.
brand loyalty from our vendors, because we're helping them make money.
Right.
If
And
you
I
can,
was
this is the
gonna say
number one
you're
thing. If you can help people make money, they
right.
will love you.
And exactly. And you're highlighting, which is also, it sounds like a lot of the local smaller businesses, right? Like your town business. So, oh my gosh, so many things to talk about. So, were you guys like replicating that? Like, I'm sure your Twin Cities, did that later expand into? So, tell me more. I mean, it sounds like there's all these back and forth, so much fluidity, business in and out, videos, seminars, and then at some point you
Yeah, we were
expanded. How
growing
was
like
that?
crazy. We had a wedding fair that we launched at the Mall of America. So you've heard of
Wow,
the Mall of
which I've
America.
been. I've been there, yes.
It's so fun.
It's
And so
insane.
Radisson Blue is this beautiful high-end hotel that's connected to the mall. And we would rent out their giant ballroom, and I would put together. Now, growing up, I went to wedding fairs with my mom, and I hated them. They were so tacky
Right.
and just like, it just was stiff. And I called it trick or treating, because you would walk around with your little bag and you'd go up to the booth and you get your free chapstick or your Hershey's Kiss, and you go to the next one, you get your
Boring.
branded pen, and then you go home and dump it out. I'm like, I'm not doing a wedding fair. Like, our vendors don't want that. Our brides don't want that. And we had both sides, brides and vendors, going, if you did a wedding fair, I would go. If you did a wedding fair, I'd buy a booth. And I'm going, okay, well, if we were to do a
That's
wedding
so
fair,
cool.
if I were getting married again, what would I want to do? Well, I like the farmers market, and I like trying a sample of the coconut before I get the this. And I
Right.
like, doing, and so we created this wedding style farmers market where brides
Wow.
could walk around and experience. And we had selfie stations, and we had a make your own floral crown station,
That's
and we had fresh
awesome.
squeezed mimosas, and they were shopping, so you could actually like try on things and buy them and go, you know what, I actually really like these earrings. These are going to be my wedding earrings. How much? Great,
Right.
here. And so they're exchanging. And I actually encourage, and then we did seminars to teach the vendors how to properly run a booth. Don't just stand there like this handing out pens.
Right. Be
Here's how.
excited
So we
about
would
what you're
educate
doing.
them. Yes. So we would
Yes.
talk to them, talk to me about your booth design, talk to me about how you're going to gather their information. Don't just have a clipboard where they can write down their name and email. Like, let's make this fun for them. So we made sure that this experience was so over the top, and that our vendors, because right, my goal is to make sure my vendors are making money.
Right.
So I don't just want them spending $2,000 on a booth and they don't book any weddings. I want to make sure that this is going to be really profitable for them, because then they're going to buy a booth at my next show. And it was, I mean, we would have vendors that would pay in full for the next 3, 4 years and would
Wow.
sponsor the shows. We would have lines of brides coming down out of Radisson Blue out into the mall, wrapping around. Mall
Right.
security hated me. And I'm like,
It
you
almost
know what?
sounds, it sounds like a revolution, like a literally revolution of the bridal industry happening because basically these three partners got together. And let's talk about, okay, so it sounds like you were literally in your what do we say? In your this is your flow. Like this is obviously you have
It
this
totally
background,
was.
you grew up around the industry, but that actually showed you what's not in what's missing, right? Like I know
Hmm.
what's there, the shop. I mean,
I
describing it
had gone through planning a wedding,
right.
made all those mistakes. Yeah.
And now, okay, so how do you choose? How do you know if the people that you're in business with are the right people? Like,
Mm.
because you're betting years of your life. You're betting hours in your day, spending, because it's like a marriage. Like it's like you're married to your
Hmm.
partner. So
And
how,
most business relationships don't work. I mean, I
okay.
would argue that a business relationship is just as hard, if not harder, than a marriage.
Yeah.
Sometimes you spend more time together
Yeah.
with, your business partner.
Hours.
I got really lucky with the two guys. They were more silent partners. So I ran 100% the day to day. One of them, really into traction. I don't know if you're familiar with Traction by Gino Wickman.
Okay.
It's this kind of, I call it like the entrepreneur's Bible. Basically, it's not a book that
Okay.
you just read cover to cover. It's one of those things that you tackle one chapter at a time, and you go back to that part years later, and you talk about it with friends and stuff. But basically, one of the things that they teach is you have this visionary and an integrator, and they're very different people. The visionary is like the
Right.
wild person with all the ideas, and they're just this optimistic, like, oh, let's do this, and you
Yeah.
usually a little ADHD and all over the place. And then
Yeah.
you have the
Yeah.
integrator, and they're a little bit more numbers and focused, and they're kind of putting everything, and they're taking all of these ideas and they're kind of locking them in. And so I was lucky, I'm the visionary, just all over
Right.
the place. And the two guys was one of each. So we had the integrator who is behind the scenes, running the numbers, doing all the boring stuff that I do not want to do,
Which
that
is
I am
also like
not
an
good at.
architect. I think it's
And
an
then I had
architect personality,
a
right?
business architect.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And then I had, and the other guy was another visionary. And so, put us in a room with a cup of coffee and we're coming up with, we're changing the world. And they were like, Mike, we got another idea.
That's
And
insane.
it was
I
fun.
totally
And,
relate
and
to that.
they get along really well. So they owned another business. So that was their full-time piece. So they ran their business, and then I did my wild crazy thing and check in every once in a while. But they were wonderful, and they trusted me, and they let me be wild and crazy, and they gave me the safety net to take those risks. I got very, very lucky because a lot of partnerships, and I've seen it happen even with friends and
Yeah.
some people that I work with, they're very difficult, and you need to put a lot
Yeah.
of time and effort and energy into maintaining that relationship, right? Because that's the foundation. If that's strong, you can build a skyscraper from that.
Exactly. And as you know, we have a legal background here in the at the firm and but I even tell, the people we work with is no matter how much you want to lawyer up your deal, who, your top lawyer at the 50th floor or boutique or whatever, at the end of the day, it's the human quality on the other end. And nothing trumps that humanity of people wanting to do things and do right by each other. That is
Mm-hmm.
really the core of that to me. It's like if you get two people that want to be right to each other and collaborate and not be greedy, that is a great formula for success. And you know, you can do the deal without any papers. Again, I'm not recommending it because, you still want to follow with your stuff, but at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, you can create a great business or a failing business by who you're doing business with,
Hmm. Well, and
right?
I would say my number one piece of advice is make sure that you have good people around you outside of your organization that you can talk to. So one of the biggest things that I discovered when all of a sudden we went from being a business to a company, right? Where
Wow.
instead of just being in startup, I've got all these employees and hundreds
Oh,
of
wow.
customers, and we're running, big numbers. And
Yes.
the guys recommended that I join a peer group. And I'm going,
Wow.
I don't really, wedding industry. What are they going to do to help me? My industry is so different. My business is so different. I'm 31 years old in a CEO seat. I'm like, they're not going to understand. me and what I'm going through. And I went and I showed up. I was pregnant with my second baby and I waddled in there
Gosh.
with my big old stilettos and, just, and it was all men. I was the youngest one by like 20 years. And, they're
Wow.
in
How
manufacturing
many
and they're,
females?
marketing and one,
One.
me.
Yeah,
And eventually there was like two or three other gals and I'm actually still friends with them to this day,
that's
but I
awesome.
kept showing up and they would talk about things. And a peer group is a monthly meeting. You meet in person. There's about 10, 12 people from all different industries because after a certain point I'm not involved in the day to day. I'm not out
Right.
hunting new wedding vendors. I'm not putting together the Instagram. I'm not doing all the little things. My job as CEO now is three things: people, money, vision. And you need to have people around you that are also going through those same things that you can talk and have that strategy. Because if you're in the weeds all day long with your team and you're not coming up for air every once in a
Right.
while and getting good outside counsel, you're going to start bickering and you're going to start, just getting into these icky areas. And so this peer group totally changed my entire leadership style, and it helped me communicate better with my business partners.
That's
Because if I'm
awesome.
having an issue with my business partner and I tell my husband about it, he's like, "Do you want me to go beat him up?" Like, that's not how we do, like this. That's
Right.
not helpful advice. It's not funny. Like, you're not, where he'll get
Right.
all upset, or where I'll tell one of my girlfriends and she, "Oh my God, that sounds terrible. You should quit." Like, I can't
Right.
quit. I own it. Like, this
Right.
is
And
not.
I
So
mean,
you need people around you that
yes.
get it and can give you good, solid advice. And that's why the peer group for me was so good, because the higher you get, the lonelier it gets, and it doesn't get easier. You get better, right? It doesn't get easier.
Yeah.
You just get better. But you need to have those sound people in your life that can call you out on your shit sometimes too,
Yeah.
when you're like, "Hey, I
Yeah.
need to make this decision, A or B." And they're like, "Let's peel back the layers. Why are you in this
Right.
predicament in the first place? How did you get here, and have you
Yeah.
thought of option C?" Like, you need people like that.
I love it. And that's your tribe. I feel like, you have your
Mm-hmm.
tribe for every aspect of your life. You have your people that you can go to.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that because we are learners, like perpetual learners. You never know enough because you'll meet a person and they'll bring a new perspective, and you'll meet somebody else and they'll have a new perspective. And everybody with our backgrounds, where you grow up, where in your case, your mom was a
Mm-hmm.
business owner. In my case, actually the same. And then that feeds into, what paradigms do you have? That's a big one. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what paradigms do you have in your life that come with what you grew up with, how you grew up with, that maybe self-limiting. So I love the idea. We also have I have my own peer group and I like to be
Mm-hmm.
challenged. Do you like to be challenged?
So much so that
Right?
after we sold the company, I started a peer group organization. So
Ah,
that's my next chapter right now, is I do exactly that. I literally
wow.
bring in CEOs, founders, business owners, and an invitation only, because you got to find the right people with the right mindset. Because somebody who already knows everything,
Right.
they're not a good
No,
fit.
no.
But it's
Vulnerability.
uh-huh.
Vulnerability,
Uh-huh.
it is just like, what is it that I don't know, right? And just being able to take it in and think about it. What can I do better? Where am I missing the mark?
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's where big growth comes in, because the things that got you to where you are not the same skills and mindset that are going to take you to that next level. And that's where so many entrepreneurs, they get stuck. They reach this ceiling and they're like, "But I'm still doing, I've gotten to this point. I am somewhat successful, but that mindset and those activities and those skills, it's a whole different skill set. It's a whole different game."
that's insane. That's awesome. I love to hear that because yeah, I don't think I've met a founder that's been successful that doesn't have that learning aspect of what else is out there. And reading books. Do you
Hmm.
read? Are you a reader? Are you a listener?
One book a week.
One
Yep,
book a
one book a
week.
week.
That's
Yeah,
amazing. Well, I can't
yeah.
quite say truthfully that I do one a week,
On
but
Audible. On
Audible, yeah,
Audible.
I
I,
use
I
that too.
drive so much, and
Yeah.
I haven't listened to the radio. That was a thing that my mentor said years ago. He was like, "You don't listen to the radio anymore. Radio is mental chewing gum. It's bubble gum for the mind. It is
Right.
completely useless. So we don't listen to the radio anymore." And I went, "Okay."
Right. Yeah, I
So
know.
Audible.
That's awesome. So, obviously, one obviously aspect about you is you're a mom and an entrepreneur. How does that work?
Mhm. I wish I could say like, oh, you just find balance and you do
Right?
it's hard. It's absolutely hard.
Yeah.
And I think you find the good in all of it, right? You know, it's all about perspective. We could sit here and go, yeah, I've missed a lot of things. I went back to work at 6 weeks with my first baby. I went back to work 2 weeks after my second baby. I don't recommend doing any of that. You know, you miss things, but at the same time, I've now created a space for myself where I'm in Florida, you know, sweating my butt off right now.
Right.
Sorry, but like I'm able to do these different things. It's hard. It puts especially somebody that is a true visionary and you're really
Yeah.
out there and you have a really hard time turning off that part of your brain because I think it can put a little stress on the marriage too, right? Going back
Yeah.
to peer groups, like it's good to have good couples in your life that can speak into you and you can talk to about stuff instead of having those terrible girlfriends in your life. They're like, just leave them, girl, just leave them. It's like, well,
I know,
okay,
right?
let's get some better strategy than that.
Yeah. You know,
But
do you feel, because we as moms, business people, entrepreneurs, I feel like our time is so limited. Like we have such limited time. And so have you like for me, I'm okay with the fact that maybe like people that I've known that have been friends, they say friends for a season, friends for a reason, friends for life.
yes,
Isn't it? I feel like so much validation in that because that's the
I've
thing.
never
Like,
heard that. I love that.
yeah, I mean, as moms, I feel like we want to be everything to everybody. And that's one of the things I caught myself on. Like about 3 years ago, I realized, well, I don't need to be everybody's friend all the time, every time, the whole give and take. And for us that are builders, visionaries, dreamers, just people with our heads way out in the outer space, it's so important to choose the mentors, choose the women that will speak into your life, choose the men that will speak into your life, and then
Mhm.
devote the motherhood. But not all motherhoods look the same. I feel
Right.
like, right? Whatever my neighbors do doesn't mean that that's not my story. I pick my story. So, with our
Hmm.
kids, they love, they know I'm passionate about what I do. And that, they actually work in the business. My
I
kids are
love
doing
that.
data entry. They,
Uh-huh.
they're learning. And so I think we can build them into the universe we've created for us
Hmm.
and not have that guilt that, society or the other people are giving us.
Yes. Well, and I think it's important not to bring that guilt home, right? Easier said than
Mhm.
done. But I want my kids to see that I'm proud of the work that I do, and I'm so
Right.
lucky and happy and grateful that I get to do this. Like I want them to find something that they get excited and passionate about. You know, my daughter already says, "I want to be an entrepreneur when I grow up," and
That's
she does these
awesome.
little, she makes these are my bracelets that they make all these little
I
bracelets,
noticed
and
them.
instead of
They're
a
so
lemonade
cute.
stand, thank you, instead of a lemonade stand they do a bracelet stand. And I'm
Right.
like, I love this, but I make her just like my dad made me do when I did a lemonade stand. I had to do a business plan and show him all of my expenses and had to get
Right.
written permission from the person I was doing it in their yard. But I do the same thing with them. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about how much money did you spend on the beads and, what kind of time, and you had your brother help you. So how much are you going to pay him? And so, she does
Right.
this and she's like, oh, well, I'm only making this much. I'm like, well, maybe we need to increase pricing, or maybe we need to get the beads on sale, or maybe we need like what it's all a
Right.
math problem, and it's not a hard math problem either. It's just massaging the numbers to go, okay, if you change this and change this and change this, you get a better this outcome. Like, how fun is
Exactly.
that? And that's simple enough for their little brains to go, oh, okay, that makes sense. I like that.
Yeah.
I
And
love I love seeing their little gears start turning.
exactly. And obviously exposing them to what we do, but like also because I keep feeling like this new generation is just so much into their phones and all that
Hmm.
they're missing out on the fun stuff of life, which is the human touch, the human, and then
Hmm.
just learning from us, that's such a big one. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Oh, I love that.
yeah. So obviously you're a super mega entrepreneur, visionary. When did you know that you are this person? You are, you don't fit in that box. You
Mm.
think outside the box, you live outside the box, you operate outside the box. When was that when did that like
It
moment
was actually early and it was an actual aha moment. I feel like I don't have a lot of these like, big lightning bolt moments, but years ago, So I started modeling at a young age. I started modeling professionally when I was 14 and started traveling and made a decent career for myself. And it was in my early 20s, and I specialized in high fashion. And early 20s, high fashion, you are old. And I'm
Okay.
going,
Wow.
okay. And I didn't make it as far as I wanted to by that age, right? So I'm already, beating myself up that I wasn't, the next Cindy Crawford. And I realized one day that, and my goal was to be on the cover of a magazine, right? Like once you get this before social media, once you get the cover of a magazine, like you've made it. And that's all I did. I tailored it. Everything I did was this path. And I realized one day, let's say I get the cover and I'm sick that morning or something happens or I'm hit by a bus.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. They'll just find some other tall brunette girl to put on the cover. It doesn't matter. It's not me. It's nothing that I did. I just was
Right.
available and got picked for that particular thing. My name's not on it. I'm promoting somebody else's product, somebody else's makeup. And it
Mm.
came to this realization that, like, I have so much more to give to this world. Like, I have
Yeah.
so many great ideas. I have so much more. And I still want to be on the cover of a magazine, but I want my name next to me. I want it to
Yeah.
be because of something that I did or built or I helped people. And again, spending that long in the modeling industry, you see the good, the bad, the ugly. And I saw a huge need, and I had a business partner. I started my first company actually when I was 22. It was called
Wow.
Style and Grace. And she was in the pageant world. I was in the modeling world. And we both were talking about how there's a lot of these pitfalls and there's a lot of areas that people are completely overlooking. And it's one of those things where you kind of look around, you're like, am I the only one that sees this? Like,
Yeah.
and we decided that we wanted to start a company that helped models and pageant contestants look at this from a business perspective and not just,
Wow.
I'm a pretty girl and I'm going to go make some money. Because
Right.
I was, again, lucky enough that when I got started in the modeling industry, my parents said, okay, you're going to do this, but you're going to learn how to do it right, and you're going to
Right.
treat this like a business. And I learned very quickly that, look, I don't have to be the prettiest, I don't even have to be the best, but I will all outwork everybody. I will show up early. I will show up with a good attitude. I will be prepared. I will work hard. I won't complain. And I booked more jobs than anybody. And again, not because I was the prettiest, not because I had the best body, not of any of those things. I outworked everybody, and I was
Wow.
smart about it. And I built the right relationships with the right people. And so we wanted to take those same skills. And the reason her and I were friends is I felt like she was the only other person who treated that world the same way. We met through
Right.
modeling. And same thing with the pageant world. And you're crowned a queen, and you're this queen, this princess for a year, and then they take the crown away, and you're a nobody. But what you can do is you can use that year to build relationships and build your reputation, because they don't take that away with the crown.
Right.
And so we started this company where we not only trained people how to go into the industry, but then how to be really profitable once you're in it,
So
how to go
these,
on a casting.
when did that company get started?
That was my first one. That was
That
when I
was
was
your first
22. That was
company.
my first
Oh my
business.
gosh.
Yeah.
So you're serial.
So
Like you're like, consider yourself
this
like
is,
a serial entrepreneur
yeah, I'm on my third
in
one
some
now.
ways, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah,
That's
but that was
insane.
my aha moment.
Right.
That's where I decided I don't want to model anymore. I don't want to just be this nobody. I want to help other people. I see this icky side of the industry that I was really lucky to stay out of. But I
Right.
can see how some people, if they didn't have a good enough backbone, or if they didn't have a good
Right.
family, or good, a friend group to go, hey, that's probably not a good idea to go to that party, or that's probably not a
Right.
good idea to go spend time with that person, like, and also understanding, like, because there's just like any industry. I don't want to say, like, the modeling and the acting world, and there's a lot of it
Yeah.
that's come public now. There's
Yeah.
people like that in every industry. Let's be
Of
honest. It's just
course.
not as
I
glamorized,
mean, and
right?
it's that sense of people are a thing, and not a human. And I feel like you
Mm-hmm.
brought humanity. I feel like, hearing all about your businesses and experience, like you're bringing humanity into the business world. Let's create the bridal shop into an activity. Basically, you turn it
Mm-hmm.
into an activity where people were socializing with each other rather than just interacting with a dress. They're not
Mm-hmm.
interacting with each other, with the baker, the flowers,
Mm-hmm.
the photographer, and everybody else involved in the process of a wedding. And then, with the models, you're bringing humanity. It's like, what is your value? Like, what is your
Mm-hmm.
value as a person? You're more than just whatever these asset that's pretty and people want to look at, and that's just beautiful. That's feel like that's
Thank
a
you.
unique, this is a
It
unique
is funny how all three businesses, the Style and Grace and Forever Bride, and now my current company, Soar, is
store.
it's all about giving people the education, the power, and the network to be very, very successful and very happy. I've
Right.
been, I've had seasons of my life where I was making lots and lots of money and I was not happy. I had
Yeah.
seasons where, the company was doing really well and my marriage is failing. Like I really
Yeah.
believe that success is this 360-degree approach. Success is health. Success is our mental being, our emotional state, not just
Everything.
what's in our bank account or what's on LinkedIn. And
Mm-mm.
and when we can have all of those working in harmony and then they start fueling each other, like that's what I get so excited about because I've been blessed and lucky to have good mentors in my life and good people that
That's
have
awesome.
helped me work on all those areas. And it's real when you slow down
Yeah.
and you become very intentional with with your with your goals and with your education and your network and who's around you. It is absolutely incredible what can start happening in your
Yeah.
life, and it's possible.
And I feel like it really comes down to that relationship. And I've heard the thing where your network is your net worth. I've heard all that said, but there's some truth to seeking the human relationship and then helping each other, just finding the people that want to build together to create something, and then the stakeholders that are, walking with you, mentoring you.
Mm-hmm.
That's just so big. That is just insane. That's really, really big.
Mm-hmm.
We started talking a little bit about impact. How do you want to be remembered? Like, because one of the
Mm.
things that we come up with, we see the entrepreneurs, we grind, we make all the money. Sometimes we don't even have time to enjoy, like all that, right? Why do you want to be remembered as or
Mm.
for?
Oh, I love that. I think I've only had one other person ever ask me that question. There was a moment during one of our, we called them monthly mingles. It was our monthly little educational seminars for our Forever Bride members, where they would come and we'd have a little party and we'd bring in a guest speaker. And there was a guy who I think he worked full-time corporate, but he wanted to be a jeweler. And through being with our program, he eventually was able to go full-time with his jewelry business and was doing really well. And he had brought his wife to the event, and they pulled me aside and said, I just wanted to say thank you because of you and what you built.
Mm.
We're taking our kids to Disney World next week.
Wow.
And we don't come from a family where anyone's ever been to Disney World in our family. Like this is a new, like this would not have been possible had it not been for your program. And I just wanted to let you know that you're going to make some kids really, really happy next week. And that just,
Wow.
like, it's more than just the business. It's more than just, right, like the followers on Instagram or more sales. Like, we're impacting families, we're impacting generations. And that, like, that hit me so hard of the work we're doing has such a bigger ripple effect than I probably will even imagine.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, like the impact, I want people to go, man, because of that thing, that idea that she had, we were able to do this, and my community was impacted this, or my son was able to do, like, I just, there's
Yeah.
my employees, I was able to hire another 100 people because we opened this division because of the workshop. Like, I don't even know what that looks like, but that's a great question. I love that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
because
It's a
I
good one
mean,
to think about.
it's one to think about, right? Like even I couldn't tell you I have the perfect answer for mine. I just know that, in my case, it took me a while to really understand who I was. Like, and people have told me, you're so self aware, and I am self-aware about, what I do, how I feel, all of that. But then I'm still trying to figure out the true impact. I'm a person of faith,
Mm.
so that is definitely,
Mm-hmm.
I want to leave that, legacy of,
Mm-hmm.
God and all of that in my life and all the things I've experienced. I want to make sure that's definitely part of my legacy. But then I've also been given things to steward, material things to
Mm-hmm.
steward and then multiply. So, I'm always curious to know what is the impact, because not
That's
every,
so good.
we spoke with somebody else where some of us are entrepreneurs, some of us own the business, and others don't. But that doesn't mean they can't leave a legacy within the realm of influence that they have. But I think all of us, no matter if you are what, what job you have or what path you've chosen or what path has been given to you, which is what's your impact? Like that's
Mhm.
big, right? Like,
I
and
love what you said about stewarding because it's
yeah,
about those gifts,
yeah,
like God will give us more. Like we are loved by an abundant creator, and he
that's right.
wants us to to not only enjoy this life and to enjoy all the gifts, but he wants us to use them and to share them with others. And I think you're exactly right. Like when we do a good job of sharing our gifts and, pushing it outward, he's going to keep flowing more through you. He's going to be like, you're
It's
great at this.
more.
Here's some more.
Exactly. And I think it's in the Bible where it says, you're given to someone who's been given a little, more will be given. There's a
Yeah.
whole thing about that and just being responsible with the assets that we have, both emotional, physical, material, whatever, and just being responsible. This is really cool. So I want to touch a little bit on your actual exit process that you've
Mm.
had. I feel like when you approach your mom, you say, "Mom, I'm gonna go do this other thing." That's kind of like an exit. You're exiting, and you mentioned, maybe your mom was a little hurt, but I mean, I think that's part of the entrepreneur life, which is we are gonna go through difficult conversations. So how do you
Mhm.
prepare for a difficult conversation, especially with like somebody like a mom or somebody, so close, in your life or with such a big impact?
Well, and I think this shows so much about her and her character. When I told her about this opportunity, she kind of smiled and said, "You've got to do this." She was
That's
hurt and knew that I
awesome.
would be leaving, but she's like, "You'd be crazy. Like you're destined for much more than just this." And of course, she was my first customer.
Wow,
She
right.
was like, "Yes, I'll join." But I think my second exit, because we ended up selling Forever Bride during the pandemic. We sold
Oh,
Forever
wow.
Bride to David's Bridal, and
Okay.
um so that was really kind of my big exit, where I was able to sell something that I had helped create out of
Right.
nothing, um
Right.
and it was the right time. It was during the pandemic, and um it was weird because hindsight's 2020. I can look back and go, wow, that was perfect how all the seasons kind of lined up and things. But
Right.
in the moment, when you're going through the storm and the chaos of everything, nothing makes sense in the moment. But then the dust settles years later and you look back and go, yeah, okay, that made sense. 2021, and we were ready to close that chapter, which then gave room for me to give birth to this new idea, Soar. And I would have never been able to have done that if I was still building Forever Bride. And
Right.
now in it, I'm going, now Soar is my real, like, this is really where God wants me to be right
That's
now.
amazing.
um but it was beautiful timing, and Forever Bride is still doing its thing, but now on a
Right.
national platform, which is so cool to see my idea being used now to serve millions of brides all over the country. And actually, as of today, the CMO, Kelly Cook, who is someone that I was very close with and just have so much respect for, she, as of today, just took over the CEO seat. So
Oh,
she is
wow.
the female CEO of David's Bridal, leading the charge and just doing amazing things over there.
That's so
Um,
great.
but it was really cool. That's not how I fully envisioned
Right.
um, the next evolution, but that's kind of part of the fun of building something and
Right.
passing it off to the next owners. They're always going to put their own ideas and their own brand into it, right? Because it's a different customer now. Now they're
Right.
they're serving 94% of all brides in the
That's
United States
insane.
versus
That's
us just
insane.
here in the Twin Cities.
Right.
But
So,
it was really special.
and when you guys started that business, Forever 21, did you guys have this sale in sight or what was the thought process? Do we want to scale and sell? Do we want to, I don't know, do an IPO? Do we want to raise funds? What was the goal other than obviously being passionate about creating something that wasn't there?
Yeah, the two guys, Charles and Mike, my two partners, that was one of their long-term goals from the beginning, was eventually we see we see this being something that could be purchased by somebody. You know, the Knot was our biggest competitor, and they obviously had the money to be able to do that someday. So that was kind of like what we had off in the distance of this is eventually where we want to be. And then of course when you're in the day to day, right? You know, I talked about kind of being down in the weeds with the team. You know, it's hard to get above all that and remember where you're
Right.
going, that North Star. But I was lucky to have the partners because on the back end, they were able to make sure that everything was buttoned up. And you'll love this from the legal side of things.
Right.
Everything was so organized. You know,
That's
Mike,
good.
who did all of, all the numbers and the accounting and the books and like everything was perfect. So when we started going through the process and going through all the due diligence and, you know, we've got
Wow.
the lawyers on both sides and, it actually was really smooth. There was,
That's
I think,
great.
all the lawyers were like, "We've never had a sale like be this easy because we were so organized from because they go back years and years
They
and
do.
years and they want to
They do.
see everything. I mean, you
Yes.
metaphorically, you lift the skirt and you
Literally.
show them
Yes.
and because we had that end game in sight the entire time, everything was organized and everything was categorized and everything was ready to go when we were ready to make that decision. So
Right.
that would be a great piece of advice is even if it's 10-20 years from now, you know, start working with people, you know, from the legal side and, you know, your accountants and just keep everything as organized as possible because it's silly the things that they ask for sometimes, you
I
know?
know.
They're like, I'm
Yeah.
so glad I saved that. Yes,
You
let me
know,
mail it over.
what we tell our founders is there are two languages that are spoken at the sale process. You need to speak the finance language. So somebody's
Mhm.
going to do a quality of earnings report, tax reports, all your finance reports, and then somebody's going to do due diligence. Your buyer will come in and look at
Mhm.
everything and literally what the other piece is, they're literally going to put your entire business into a stack of papers this thick, and your business will basically be written in pages. And this is the description, and this is what it is. And so it
Uh-huh.
is, I ask because a lot of our founders just, they create a baby and then they think they're going to pass it on to the family. Other founders think, we want to raise capital. Others say, well, I want to do an IPO. And then a lot of them, we want to sell this thing, but it is a
Mhm.
job to sell your business. It is as an important job as it is to build a business. And then
Mhm.
coming into the process and not speaking the legal language, don't maybe not having
Yes.
that can make it difficult. But I'm glad to hear yours was smooth. We love to see the smooth deal because I
Mhm.
actually believe every deal can be very smooth. People don't have to
Mhm.
get divorced. We have so many people, oh my gosh, my wife is about to leave me. My kids don't see me. And it doesn't need to be like that. And it can be a
Mhm.
joyful moment.
Well,
Yeah,
and even this is great advice too. Like it took us almost a year from start to finish, which
right.
in you know is
Yeah,
very short. You know, and I'm
yeah.
stressing out, going, why is it taking so long? And it's been months, and it's this, and you know, again, later you look back and go, oh, knowing what I know now, that was really fast.
Yeah,
These things I had no idea. I had no idea that they took so long.
yeah.
So yeah, I think start to finish, we were under 12 months.
That's great. And then mentally, the emotional preparation, you're going through
Mhm.
this due diligence, and then, at some point you're going to sign the paper, and then the business is no longer yours, or the equity,
It's
maybe
very
not.
anticlimactic, by the
It,
way, when you sign. There's
right?
no like confetti cannon that
No,
goes off. You sign it and
it's
you go,
like,
oh, that's it. You know, we went
yeah,
out to dinner or something with the spouses.
I know.
I had a friend that had gone through the same process, and she reached out and I love this. I feel like if you've got good advice to share, don't wait for people to ask for your advice. Feel free to reach out and go, hey, I know you're going through this thing. Here's my advice because this piece was so good and I didn't realize that I needed it so much. She basically said, um, hey, you know, you're going through the sale. I want you to take some time to mourn your company
Yeah.
because
Oh, I love
it is
that.
going to die in a way and
Yeah.
not in a bad way. But I want you to take some time to like emotionally close the chapter because it is no more. Even though it's going over here and it's going to live on, it's going to be completely different. And if you have this mentality of like it still is what it is, and that's my because it's your baby. How many times do we
Right.
call it our baby? It's your baby is now done, and it's so
And
take some time,
somebody
mourn
else,
it,
yeah.
and that way you won't be so emotionally attached to it when they change the name and change the logo and they change this and they change that, which they will, and that's okay, and that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
It's my kids are into
And take
Pokemon.
your employees,
Like it's evolving, right? It's
take your
changing and evolving
people.
into something else.
Yeah.
Yes. And so that was
Yeah.
really good advice, was just take some time, mourn the business. It's going to be this version of it is dead now, you know.
Because you're dedicated. I mean, how many years? What you said it was 5 years between, when you.
Uh no, almost 10 or 11.
Oh,
No, we
sorry. Oh,
started.
wow. I
No,
thought
no,
it
no,
was
it's okay.
shorter.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I know, sorry, we got my timelines all messed up earlier. So 2012 was
Okay.
when I said yes to Charles and
Yes.
Mike
Okay.
and coming on board. And then the sale was final in 2022.
Yeah. It's definitely an emotional moment. I mean, it's very emotional. It's
Hmm.
very emotional because at the same time that you're selling, you got to keep your business running. So the business needs to run,
Yes.
and you're having all these extra meetings and the lawyers that count everybody. So, well, that's great. Well, Ashley, you have a fabulous story. It sounds like you have,
Thank you.
I guess, at the new chapter now with SOAR and doing the mentoring and getting people together. So I am so excited to have met you and get to share a little bit of your story here with everybody. So if you had one last takeaway, maybe for people who
Mm,
are founders, who are building, maybe thinking about selling, maybe thinking about not selling, what's something that you just want to share
mm.
to with people?
My husband sent me something the other day because he's been my biggest cheerleader from day one. You know, we've been together since before Forever Bride, actually before even Style and Grace. Like we got
Wow.
married, I was really young. And he sent me something the other day on Instagram, and it was just, one of those cute little quotes. I love good little nuggets like that. And it hit me so hard. And I'll find it, I'll send it to you because I want
Yeah.
to properly give it the right verbiage. But basically it said something about the real entrepreneurs, the real winners, they're the ones that don't give up when the parades are over and
Ooh,
the excitement has dwindled and nobody's cheering for you. No one's, like, because there is in the beginning that's
there's
it's these
glamour.
fireworks and the excitements and glamour.
Yes.
Everyone's all excited and they ask you about it, and then and you keep going. You keep going. You're doing the same thing and the same thing and the same thing and the same thing, and nobody really cares, and people ask you how it is and nothing's changed because you're still going and you're still grinding, and that's where most people give up, and they're like, I'm still doing it, I'm still doing it, I'm still showing up, nothing's changing, I'm still, like, nothing's growing, but it's not going down. It's this gray area that is lonely,
Ooh,
and that's where those negative
that's so
voices
good.
creep in,
Yeah.
and that's where you want to slow down, and you need to take so deep and be your own damn cheerleader and not rely
Right.
on the social media and the husband and this. And he was like,
Yeah.
that's you.
And
Like, you
that's
didn't give up on those long gray years, moments, eras, whatever. Let me find it, I'll send it to you, because it is, oh,
that's
it just like
awesome.
hit this thing.
It does hit hard because that I think that goes to identity. I think that
Mm-hmm.
goes to who you think you are, who you perceive your, I mean, no, and so being comfortable in the lonely moment where maybe the glamour is not there, the cheerleading is behind. That's so
Mm-hmm.
big. And that again, I mean, we can have another hour here talking about just that. But that is so amazing. I love, and I also love how you obviously I can tell you and your husband have this beautiful partnership, and it's just beautiful to see, when I come across entrepreneurs and couple entrepreneurs that are just building, something that I can totally tell you guys are gonna have these amazing and already have these amazing impact. I just love that. And then how we're building families that are growing around these healthy entrepreneurship, healthy business,
Mm-hmm.
healthy relationships with money, and all of that stuff. So that's so amazing. So
Mm-hmm.
congratulations to you both. I
Thank
love
you.
it. Because we see it, especially us with the legal side, we see all the different facets and all colors and shapes, and it's
Oh
not
yeah, I
always
bet.
pretty. Yeah. So, but anyway, we love, I've loved speaking with you, Ashley. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And I can't wait to see what is next and all the other great things you're going to do.
Oh, I love it. This has been so fun. Thank you so much. It's been fun to go down memory lane and share some of these things. It feels like, again, it feels like that's the place that I'm in, is I get the opportunity to share all of this wisdom that people went out of their way to help me and open doors. And I'm on LinkedIn. That's how you and I originally
Yeah,
connected, and that's one of my favorite places. That's like my Instagram. So
yeah.
I'm more than happy if people are in that gray area, or they need a friend. I'm more than happy to just be a friend or a mentor or a cheerleader if you need one.
That's awesome, Ashley. I really appreciate you.
I love it. Thank you.